Ever finish a card and just feel like something's off? Too much empty space or not enough? Maybe your sentiment disappears into the background. White space is one of those things that can make or break a card. Too little and everything feels cluttered. And too much and it can feel like it's unfinished. Today I'm sharing 3 simple ways to make white space work for you, not against you. Whether it's balancing a busy background, placing sentiments just right, or evenly spacing elements for a polished look. And since my wedding card stash is seriously lacking, anybody else struggling to find wedding supplies these days? I'm going to be using my latest release to fix that. So let's get started. All right, let's dive into the cards. And just because I'm using my new release does not mean in any way you can't use your own supplies for this. This is also going to be my last release with Craft Stash so that I can focus 100% of my content on using your card making stash, which is what I'm so passionate about. All right, so let's get started on these cards. I'm going to grab this set of sentiment dies, which has things like always and forever, be mine, congratulations, just married, engaged, OMG, a whole bunch of sentiments that are perfect for any sort of engagement, bridal shower, or wedding card. Or Valentine's Day for that matter. And I'm going to cut them all out of white cardstock. So why am I cutting all of them? Well, first of all, I really like to see what my word dies look like when I buy them. And second of all, I like to create cards like this with backgrounds filled with word dies. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I've decided that always and forever is going to be the focus of my card. So I'm just going to go ahead and arrange all of these word dies on the background of the card. So essentially I'm creating a background filled with dies that gives my card texture, a beautiful white on white look, and is a lot more exciting than just having a plain white background. So I just fiddled with these until I was happy and I got most of these sentiments on there. And then the issue is now with white space is where am I going to add? How am I going to add a sentiment? So there's a couple options here. You can obviously cut one in colored cardstock. You could cut it in black cardstock, which is always perfect. Black and any sort of metallics always work really nicely with white on white cards. So I'm going to go ahead and do a black die cut here of that always and forever as well. So I was really lucky when I die cut this that all the letters stayed in place. It cuts beautifully, but it would have had to just poke out the letters, which come out very easily, as you can see from the always and forever die cut, because it's the same die. And I was able to then glue this one on top. So rather than going in and paper piecing the letters, I was able to just glue this on top. Now, if you don't want to have any sort of shadow around your white die, then it might be better to paper piece the letters. But overall, I love how this turned out. Plain, beautiful, simple, elegant. Just a heads up, if you're enjoying all of these wedding cards, you can download my free wedding inspiration guide over at justinehobie.com/free, where I have tons of ideas, designs, written instructions, and supply lists for you to create some amazing cards. Another thing I love to do when it comes to white cards, or primarily lots of white space, is to add a very subtle amount of color. So I grab this really thin die that is full of hearts, and then I'm going to use my markers to create a rainbow. You can also do this obviously with paper strips, but I just decided this was going to be a lot quicker than gluing all those paper strips on. So I go back and forth between all the colors, and then I sent this through my die cutting machine. So once I had my die all finished, then I toyed around with the idea of which sentiment to put on my card. I had a bunch of these sentiments cut out from when I did the previous card, so I grabbed that OMG, I thought this would be perfect, and then I grabbed a congratulations. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this or not, and I definitely didn't. It was just too wide for this type of card, I found, so I went and grabbed a stamp instead. Now, I really like sassy, sarcastic, and funny stamps, so I've decided to create a sentiment stamp that goes with all of these wedding supplies that is all snarky and funny. And this one here says, congratulations on finding someone willing to put up with you forever. And this is what the final card looks like. So lots of white space, very easy to recreate. So for my next card, I grabbed this hearts die set. There's, I think, 18 different types of hearts. It's perfect as a basic stash for embellishments. You can use them in shaker cards. You could use them as focal points, whichever you like. And I grabbed a whole bunch of scraps here in various shades of pink, dark red, and things like that. And I'm going to die cut all of these all at the same time with a Glad I Chose You sentiment in black. I'm going to show you how to evenly space your elements so that you have even spacing every time.
Okay, so how do I do even spacing? Now, what I do first is I always use odd amounts of accents. So I grabbed 5 here, and I'm gluing the one in the center first. This is the easiest to glue down because you don't have to worry too much about measuring. Then I will glue either the right or the left side. And this way I can see how much white space I have between the edge of my card and the accent. So now I'll glue the opposite side, keeping that spacing in mind. I want roughly the same amount of white space between on the left and the right side. And at this point, then you just need to glue these in the center of the previous accents that you've already glued. I find this to be the best way to go about doing things, especially because it can be really difficult to evenly space elements that aren't all the same size or the same shape. And this way, the eyeball route works really good without having to take out a ruler and measuring things, because that would get super complicated and annoying and not fun. So that is how I finished off that quick and easy card. Super easy to recreate. Now for my next card, this is where I struggled because I had this really cool look, but it was too much. My background was too busy. The white space just was not shining. So how do I fix things like that? And it's pretty easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and stamp this anyway, the Mr. and Mrs., bride and groom. And of course, these are all separate stamps. So if you need a bride and bride, a groom and groom, you can go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to figure out how to fix a busy background. Because if you look at this always and forever, it gets lost. The focus just is not there. It's too much on the background. All right, so here comes the best tool ever, or the best thing ever in your stash, and that is vellum. It tones down every background automatically, and you can see how the always and forever now stands out while still keeping that integrity of the cool typography and background. In order to glue the vellum, you have 2 options. Like I did, you can glue behind the die cut, but of course the corners are not glued down. And if that bothers you, or you feel like someone's gonna roughhouse with your card, then what you can do is run the vellum with a piece of, or an adhesive sheet, the whole thing on the adhesive sheet, and then the whole piece of vellum will have glue on it.
Now that you've got a handle on white space, let's talk about backgrounds. One of my favorite ways to create depth and texture is ink blending with heat embossing. If you haven't tried it yet, or want some fresh ideas with it, check out this video next, where I share 4 creative ways to combine these techniques for gorgeous results.